Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this fourth talk in the series on the 4 ways of changing the mind, the 4 common foundations. In the first talk, we had the overview. In the second talk, the method for contemplative reflection. In the third talk, how to deal with the doubts and the confusions that come up when we reflect deeply. And today, we go on to the actual 4 thoughts themselves. And the first one is, of course, that about the precious human existence. Our method of study, as explained in the first talk, is to, first of all, read through the Gampopa teachings, the Patrul Rinpoche teachings, and to make a list of the key points about which we are going to reflect. Gampopa gives us 21 main points. Patrul Rinpoche adds to that another 16 points. The purpose of this talk is not for me to describe each of those 40 or so points. It would take far too long. It's not this for a YouTube video. In Samiling and other places, we do a whole weekend retreat on precious human existence, and even there we have to rush. So today I'm talking more in general about the groups of topics to try and give some idea of the main things we are trying to achieve. In general, the reason that we need, first and foremost, to meditate on our precious human existence is because we have very little objectivity about where we are just now in the scheme of things. If you're watching this, then it's probably pretty much guaranteed that you do have what we call a precious human existence. You are one amongst trillions, literally, one amongst trillions. And the problem is that this life is unreliable. We have no idea how much longer we are going to be in this human existence, or what is going to turn up tomorrow. So just today, you probably have the most wonderful circumstances for doing what we call practicing Dharma. In other words, liberating yourself, finding wisdom, truth, beauty inside your very own mind in a way that will make you so useful for yourself and for everyone. That's what we mean by practicing Dharma. But the problem is, we grew up. Well, that's it. The problem is we grew up. We grew up without the objectivity. We grew up totally immersed in what became our life. And you've probably all seen this when a little baby is born, how it learns bit by bit. It acquires habits, mannerisms. It learns language. It copies the other children, it's influenced by its culture, its parents, and gradually it develops into a somebody through the teenage years and so on. It's a very busy and absorbing process, and it's not surprising that we don't have objectivity. Although serious research on thousands of children shows that in the years when they can express themselves and before they really are very exposed to education and other children, that some 28% of them do have past life memories, things which don't fit at all with their present surroundings or what they've heard, that they couldn't really make up. And these disappear around the age of 5 and 6 with education. But even when that's the case, these are already vague memories, 1 or 2 things. It's not as though They remember the whole string of past lives, whole lives, one after another, that they've been through. So, to all intents and purposes, even though we believe in reincarnation, we kind of started afresh when we were conceived and then born into this life. And that was completely all-enveloping. There is no way, normally, that we could see ourselves as the Buddhas see us, as our teachers see us. And probably if you're watching this video, then you are what we call a precious human being. So these contemplations take us through a series of thoughts that bring that home, that help us realize what potential we have. And we realize that this precious human existence is really about potential. It doesn't mean, wow, you're a precious human being, there's nothing left to do. Somehow it's all going to work out. You're a chosen one. And from now on, it's on rails, it will just go forward. We need, as Gampopa said, tremendous effort. But that effort can bear fruit because everything is there to make the results happen. And that's the difference with the existences which aren't precious human existences. Even if somehow there could be the effort, it would be too difficult to really make headway, make progress. Whereas with a precious human existence, almost, we could say, everything is possible. Anything is possible. So then, our first set of contemplations, if we start with the Gampopa, tell us about actually what we are not. Seeing what something's not is a very important part of working out what it is. So we consider the three lower realms and how it's almost impossible, it is impossible really, to practice Dharma if one's reborn in those states. We look at some of the higher realms, the Deva realms, where there would seem to be fantastic circumstances. But there the problem is that it's too nice. There's no incentive to practice. And we can really understand that when we look at our own lives, we look at our friends in the Dharma centers, and sometimes when life's going swingingly, then one's very busy, just enjoying it. Unfortunately, it's only sometimes when things go pear-shaped, when somebody gets sick, has a bereavement, that then their heart really turns to Dharma again. So in the upper realms, the mind is either completely absorbed in meditation, so unavailable at the moment, or absorbed in pleasure. They're not suitable either. And then there are human states, very primitive states, where one is in a sort of tribal reality and living on a very low level. Of course, that doesn't need to be in a jungle with ethnic people. Just down the road from here in Marseille, in some of the sectors, it's very, very tribal. And one sees how children who grow up, they're completely swept along. They have to be part of the mob, otherwise they're ostracized. They have to speak like them, act like them. And their interests are very low level. Maybe it's unkind to say that, but that kind of thing makes a huge obstacle. Some people are born in places where there's no Dharma, no possibility of Dharma. They'll never even hear of it. And in fact, until the last 100 years with travel and the world shrinking, where you were born would have been absolutely critical to know whether you had access to Dharma or not, good Dharma or not, good teachers or not. Today things are very novel. It's a new situation. So anyway, we look very carefully one after another at these 8 very unfavorable states, and we think about the billions and billions of beings in those states. They are living beings, like you, like me. They are in the past, our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. They were just like us, but now, through the play of karma, cause and effect, they are in other states. And there are so many of them. For instance, in Africa, a swarm of locusts, just one swarm of locusts, has 4 times the number of beings as the human population of this planet. There are millions upon millions of species of animals in this world, let alone the various beings we can't see. And in the Deva realms, so many beings as well. To be human, as we are, is very, very rare. And we think about that, first of all, to understand just how many. There is a whole ocean of sentient beings of life. If you just go even to Samiling's Lake in the summer and see the tens of thousands of beings that there are there, Wak, wak, the frogs, the little insects, the fish, and so on. They're all living beings with minds, with lives, going about whatever they're doing, just like us. But our life has the Dharma possibility. So we think about that deeply, going through one by one each of the states, and knowing that sometime in the past we've been in those states, hoping not to be reborn in them in the future, but of course that depends what we do in this life. That's the whole point, using this precious life to the full. Having realized what we are not for the moment, then the next set of contemplations, 10 of them in Gampopa, helps us to think what we are at least today. And of those 10 things, there are 5 that are outside us, in the world around us, and 5 that are part of us, within us. They're called assets. We have the wonderful gift of these circumstances. So when we look around us, we see the Dharma's present in the world. And even though it was launched 2,500 years ago, it's still intact. It's still a living thing with teachers who have the realization, the experience, who can communicate everything about it. It's accessible where we are, or we have the possibility of traveling to get it. In other words, in our lives, Dharma is there. There is nothing to stop us from that point of view. Nothing where no matter how much we longed for Dharma, you could say, well, the teachings aren't there, or good enough teachings aren't there, or good enough teachers aren't there. It's all there. That's amazing. That's very rare. So amongst all the human beings who aren't in those 8 unfavorable states, in your life, somehow, through your karma, you have access to Dharma. And then on the inside, you have the heart that's inclined to it, the good karma. You have the wits and the intelligence to be able to understand it and to practice it. You don't have serious obstacles inside you that stop it from happening. Inside you, there is something that could respond. So the response kit is there inside you. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's up and running or working to its best, but the potential is there. So again, we think day after day, taking each of the 10 topics one by one. We think very carefully, very deeply. We bring it to life. We try and see ourselves like a Buddha on the moon with a telescope might see us. Zooming in, looking at you and saying, wow, that person has Dharma on their doorstep. That person has the good karma from the past to respond to it. there is a potential for something amazing to happen that will change all of that person's future lives. If only, if only. And then, after the 10 assets, once we've thought about those, we look at the 3 types of faith. They are very important because they are what will take this circumstance where everything's there around us, the potential's there within us, and they'll determine how effectively, how efficiently, how brilliantly we use this precious opportunity. We consider each of the 3 types of faith. The first, which is a more mechanical type of faith, where we study the ideas, we think about karma, cause and effects, interdependence, we think about meditation and so on, and the 4 truths, the 2 truths. It makes sense. So that faith, that trust, because it makes sense, is the first type of faith. The second type of faith is more aspiration, inspiration. This is where the life of the Buddha, the great teachers, our present masters, living examples, inspire us. And basically we feel, I want to be like that. And we know the Dharma is the way, and so we turn to them that they guide us on the way, and we trust their guidance. That's the second type of faith. The third type of faith can be explained in several ways. I like Kala Rinpoche's explanation, where this third type, the faith of clarity, is more a fruition. It's what emerges, because the more you practice, the more you study, the more you get into the Dharma, the more it's so clearly the truth, the more it makes sense, and the more from your own experience you've realized it's the truth. Whether you're working inside your mind or dealing with the people and events in life around you, it is so glaringly the truth, and what you're reading in the Dharma teachings, hearing from the teachers, is just putting life's experience so brilliantly into an explanation and a framework you can work with. So that's the faith of clarity. It's a very joyous faith, the third type. Those 3 types of faith are, in the 21 conditions, an area where we can really work a lot. We can improve them, or we can neglect them. And it's very important to think about those. With those 21 points, we have our definition of a precious human existence. We can add to them the 16 points of advice from Patrul Rinpoche, which also help us define the precious human existence. Patrul Rinpoche talks about 8 intrusive factors. In a way, they're like the 8 unfavorable circumstances we find in Gampopa. But here they're not unfavorable in the sense of totally excluding Dharma practice. It's a bit less severe than that. These are things that could really stop it happening, even though there's a chance. So we see things like finding the wrong gurus, false gurus, and following them. So we are getting bad advice, bad influence. And with a false guru, you don't have the power and the blessing of the lineage that's there, which is really, in the end, the most important thing. And then one may not have a false teacher, but one may have a tendency to falsehood oneself, where the Dharma practice is really just a way of showing off. It's something that is there to nurture the ego rather than to get rid of the delusions of ego. Or there can be a lack of enthusiasm, where you are just very, very lazy. You can't actually be bothered to do it. You, in a way, understand what a brilliant thing it is to do, what a good thing to practice Dharma. But somehow your laziness gets the better of you day after day, month after month, year after year, and in the end you've done very little. Or your intelligence isn't terrific. So even though you may be quite diligent and able to practice, somehow if you are not that bright, it's a lot of effort that's not really skillfully invested, and so on. So with that, Patrul Rinpoche shows us 8 difficulties. So there, with those 8, because there is a chance, usually there is something we can do about it. If you discover you've joined up with the wrong type of Buddhists, you've been attracted by a false guru, then it's possible to change and start again with a good teacher. If you discover that your practice is mainly egotistic, then we can learn about humility. There's something that can be done. And if you are not very bright, then with your teacher's help, there are ways to develop a much more intelligent approach to the practice. So with these 8 intrusive factors, Patrul shows us, he gives us a way of reflecting, because if you see yourself in those, you say, yes, in fact, that's a bit the case with me, then we know there's an answer, and we know that actually we could be a very precious human being, but maybe we need to work on that particular area. The other set of 8 circumstances that Patrul Rinpoche explains, these are 8 incompatible factors. They are things like those people who actually enjoy harming others. People who, when they hear the universal truths of the Dharma, are completely untouched. Talk about love and compassion leaves them cold. They're more interested in profit, personal gain, fame. Sometimes these things are so strong, or people have a personal karma that's so strong, such a tendency to anger, to jealousy, greed, and so on, that it really sabotages all of the rest that's in the person. So again, we look at those 8 incompatible factors in Patrul Rinpoche. Altogether, the things we reflect on in Gampopa and Patrul make 37 key topics. So then to those we need to add a few more, but let's stop there for today so that this talk is not too long. Today we've mainly looked at what defines a precious human existence. In the next talk we'll go on to see how to relate to that and how to use it to the best. As ever, thank you very, very much. Wishing you all the best and excellent reflective contemplation. Bye-bye.